The camera opens into the glaring hot bright sunlight in late Eridus, summertime in the city of Westcrown. Below we can see the steepled houses and cobblestoned streets winding their way north towards the Rego Crua, the Blood Sector, a part of town that once held a wide array of less desirable businesses in Westcrown, like tanneries and slaughterhouses. As we approach the northern walls of Rego Crua, we can see the Run Tatari patrolling the bannerments, making sure that the more violent element of the northern ruins of Rego Crua do not enter through into this civilized part of Westcrown. Dangerously close to the walls to the ruins is the Pliatra. We can see a massive building complex made of multiple squat, ugly buildings. A complex that for many years has not seen any work or attention or care up until the last 2-3 years. Marcus, what are some aspects that we would see on this building complex that would denote its transformation into a Wizkrani orcish hold?
The Pliatra was never meant to be decorative. It was a functional building when it was originally built, a facility to hold criminals and other enemies of Westcrown. But as it lay abandoned, and when the orcs of Belkzen came to Westcrown, they saw the potential of the Pliatra. And in the past few years, some of the worst holes in the walls have been patched up, boarded up with whatever kind of material the orcs could find. The inner square, where once maybe prison inmates got their time out in the sun for a few hours a day, has become a tapestry of tents and banners. And most importantly, on the highest walls of the Pliatra, each family, each clan of the Belkzen that has come here to Westcrown seeking a new future, seeking new path, have put up their own family banners and flags with orcish symbols in purple, red, yellow fly in the winds, denoting that the Belkzen are here, and they're here to stay.
Beautiful. Well done. The camera zooms to the second level of this sort of inner courtyard that is open to the bright, hot sun beaming down, where we can see what once were cells that held iron bars. Those have now been, for the most part, removed, torn off, and covered with leather hides to create makeshift doors and provide some privacy to the people living within these cells. And we see a green-skinned hand pull a leather tarp aside and moves into what is now a makeshift apartment shared by 3 people, Zehkhun and his 2 friends. The person walking in is a female orc. Do you want to describe her? Should I describe her?
I don't mind describing her. She's a female orc, as you mentioned. Her skin has a darker earthen tone to it, striking red eyes, and her blonde hair is tied into several braids that are then in turn tied together at the back of her head. She is wearing very functional clothing made out of leather with a few stitched ornaments on them. And as she enters, she might have a bit of a mild frown on her face, not so much about the situation, but more about how this apartment is in dire need of a little bit of householding and a little bit of a cleanup at this moment, as its current inhabitants might have not cared too much about that.
She walks up to you and clasps her hand on his shoulder. Well, I was coming to check in to see how you've settled in, but it seems like you're not unpacked at all, or rather, did you plan on organizing any of this?
Zehkhun turns around. He was currently busy pouring himself a cup of tea into a small mug. And as he turns around, we see his full physique. He's a tall, broad-shouldered orc, in that regard matching many of the descriptions that people give of orcs when they might have never seen one in their life before. Zehkhun is also clearly already a little bit older, middle-aged. There are some folds in his faces, combining with a few scars that cover his forehead and his cheek. But as he turns around, there is also a very friendly smile on his face as he already snickers at the remark of Ravaja. His pale blue eyes glow slightly, and they are a stark contrast to his very pale, ashen skin and in turn, his rather colorful clothing that he's wearing. Lots of different dyed pieces of leather on him. So especially the pale skin and this glow in his eyes, they stand out very much. His dark hair is tied back in a man bun, and there are streaks of just snow white in there as well. He turns to Ravaja and says, I wasn't sure yet what to do with the place. And so far, I'm thinking maybe putting a little table over there. But then I'm thinking about putting a table there, and then I'm thinking maybe a bookshelf would be better. So then I end up keeping the space open, putting some stuff I still have over there. You never know where we might end up. Now, do you,
suppose
Ravaja?
Not. I honestly never believed that I would see the day where you come to settle down in Westcrown.
To be honest, I had not thought I would enter this city ever. But then again, I never thought I would live to this age. You know.
Her eyes sort of glance down, and she nods.
What we have endured. What we have been through.
I regret that our people have suffered long at the hands of the Whispering Tyrant, but I am glad that we have been given a new chance to settle down and continue to grow.
It's hard to see the new forest that will grow after it has been burned to the ground. And he looks around the room, smiles. Who knows? If we keep expanding this place here, they'll never see that this used to be a prison. It's going to be impressive. I like what they've been doing so far with this place.
We've been working very hard. You should have seen it a few years ago when I arrived with the first batch of caravanners. It was dismal, but now there's hope. And in this new generation of orcs that are being born here, I can see it in their eyes. They can call this home. I only wish that the rest of Westcrown agreed.
I've already heard that the neighbors are giving us a little bit of a hard time.
That would be putting it lightly.
Any efforts of reaching out to them?
It is a new thing for the orcs of Belkson to extend a hand in partnership to anyone not of one of our holds.
So I've gathered. All these banners on top of this building, all of families and clans that are familiar to us.
To us.
But to us.
But to the Wizkrani households who have lived here multiple generations spanning back perhaps hundreds of years. We're interlopers, monsters, even.
I fear they might have heard the stories about us. The whispers and rumors.
There was a time where those rumors were fact. In our history, we served the Whispering Tyrant. But now we fight against him. Now, with diplomacy, a growing seed in our arsenal of tools, House Thrune has agreed to continue accepting refugees from Belkson and from the borders of the Gravelands. Not all of us are fighters, but it is good to have some who are with us. And she smiles at you, bearing some toothy fangs.
I have not been in this city for long, and I must admit I do not know the people and customs of this land fully well, but the name Thrune I have heard spoken in a variety of tones, some of them of reverence, some of them in fear. In what kind of tone would you invoke the name of House Thrune?
They are an ally to Belkson. We protect them from the hordes of undead streaming from the Gravelands, and they provide us with aid and our weak with shelter. There are even a few groups in our community who have begun attending services at the Katata Nesudidia. And if Zehkhun makes a face of not recognizing the name, she further explains, "You've certainly seen the cathedral. At night, it glows with a sinister red light. And it is the temple to their devil god, Asmodeus."
That's where our kin do go and congregate?
Some of us have gone there. It is, in fact, expected that citizens of that Wizkrani will attend services regularly.
You see Zehkhun looking away, frowning, and briefly pondering this information. He doesn't want to judge. He is new to the city. He takes in this information, but it does concern him. He does know the name Asmodeus. He has heard the stories of this worship of this deity. And he doesn't know what place the Belkson orcs have if they follow a deity like that, what that means for the Belkson orcs. And after pondering it for a while, he looks back at Ravaja. His frown completely disappeared, a smile back on his face, and he says, "You didn't come here to teach me on local history. You stepped in here with a certain goal, haven't you? And you certainly didn't come here to help me rearrange and settle in."
She smiles. I wanted to check in and invite you out for a stroll. Halaric and Little Boulder.
Oh.
She frowns. Baruch. I've never liked that nickname. Halaric and Baruch are already out. They've been making friends, but Zehkhun, you've been here since you've arrived. How long ago did you arrive?
I would say it isn't that long ago, actually. Maybe he's just been in town for a week, and he's still getting a lay of the land, getting settled in, and is very much a newcomer to Westcrown.
And Zehkhun's a charismatic person,
Very.
I'm guessing.
Very.
So would it be out of character for him not to is he an introvert or an extrovert, I think is the question.
He is very charismatic, and he does like to strike up conversation. And especially here in the Pleat, he would have in the past week been walking around and getting to know a few of the other orcs that are here. He really likes to know where all of these other orcs are coming from. And he's been talking with them about, like, what brought them to Westcrown? Where were they before they came here? So he's very much engaging with the people here in the Pleat, with his people. But he hasn't been very much outside of the Pleat so far. Maybe that is due to him still getting his bearings, still getting used to a city like Westcrown, which is very different from the Belkson Holds outside of the city. Maybe it's also a little bit of fear to step out into the city. But if prompted, he would definitely go and leave the Pleat. But it would probably be his first time getting further away from this improvised hold.
I wanted to invite you on a walk. Not far, just around the Rego Crua, the blood sector, which fits our people well.
It is a glorious name, is it not?
To feel the rhythm of the streets. I know all too well how one can lose their confidence staying within these walls, knowing that big city is out there, judging, waiting. The more we walk amongst its streets and amongst the Wizkrani, the quicker they will come to accept us as one of their own.
Do you know what I find most unusual about these streets? When you walk them at night, you can look up into the sky, and you hardly see the stars. The lights of the city, they blot out the starlight. Do you still remember how we, before all of this, would sit outside in front of our tents and look at all of the constellations?
We would make up stories of the people and beings we saw up there.
Ravaja, since I came here, I've hardly seen a single constellation.
You'll get used to it. But, Zehkhun, I'm concerned. To leave the Pleat at night, it's far too dangerous.
Would it comfort you if I told you that I technically didn't leave the Pleat? I climbed up on the walls.
Good.
Nestled in on top of them. Up on the rooftop.
That would help, but here within the Pleat we keep torches and bonfires lit all night to drive back the shadow beasts that roam this haunted city.
So I've heard.
Out in the streets, it is much riskier.
But I'm assuming if we together take a stroll outside, nothing would dare harm us. Ravaja, come on.
Zehkhun, you don't understand. I lost my mate to those shadow beasts.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I did not know.
He was not the only orc we've lost. Many have thought themselves brave or strong enough to fight back the darkness. Some have survived, and in Gorham's name, thrived. But most were devoured.
He looks a little bit ashamed by making this joking gesture and then unknowingly hitting that nerve. You can actually see him look away, and Zehkhun is like thinking about what to say next, but instead he just looks at Ravaja. He takes one more sip from his cup of tea, puts it aside, and says, "Let us take a walk, friend, for old time's sake."
I think the two of you maybe walk around the Pleat. She will take you around the streets of the Plietra. And the rest, so around the Rego Crua, She'll probably walk you north to Obregon Gate, which I need to put on this map. She leads you to the gate that stands between Rego Crua and Rego Cader. Cater? I haven't figured out how we're going to pronounce that yet. Rego Cader, the northern ruins, explains that is the ruined part of the city. The Rego Cader, the dead sector.
What destroyed it?
Time. These days, it is mostly where violent criminals live. A few of our hold members have moved into the dead sector, for they did not wish to be bound by the rules of our hold, by the pact we have made with the city of West Crown, and to uphold its rule of law. These are the same orcs that balked when Ardax the Whitehair began his stewardship of Urgir and Belkson.
I believe that no matter who leads our people, there will always be those who wrestle with the idea of having someone above them telling them what to do, where to go. As much as we try, I don't think we will ever bring all of our kindred under one banner.
And that itself is true in West Crown. For the Karmaja orcs from the Menador Mountains to the north, they, of all of the people of West Crown, seem to have accepted us the least. But I believe that is the influence of the Hell Knights. She says that with looking to see if that name says anything to you.
I've always found that title a little bit amusing. Hell Knights. It sounds like they take themselves just a little bit too seriously.
I have known tales of bands of orcs in Belkson who have done the same. But there are also Matangi orcs in West Crown, from the Mwangi Expanse.
From so far away.
It is a, as they say, cosmopolitan city. In Belkson, we had no ocean with which to connect to. Here, you'll find West Crown is connected to the rest of the world.
I will be honest, I still have to get used to all of the water here.
It is nice not to have to worry about dehydrating.
Would you advise to drink the water here?
There are parts of the river, canals where you can collect water, as we do. When the wells run dry, this summer has been a particularly rain-free summer. But the river Adivian is large, and it has never sunk, as long as I've been here at least.
Bodes well for our people.
She nods. You can see, as you're sort of looking at the gate, there are people going through. The Rundatari are sort of checking them, and people coming back. In particular, you actually could see mostly humans, but there are a few goblins. And you also see a few leshies, small plant people sort of coming through and looking very excited as they step into the city.
Zehkhun has never seen a Leshy before. And he looks at these quirky plant people coming by, and he looks fascinated at them.
You would see most of them are ivy, made from ivy leaves. But there are one or two mushrooms that are walking past as well.
And as he looks at them, he just gently puts his elbow in Ravaja's side and says, "Who are these people?"
The Leshies. That is why the gate here is open. They are reforming a part of the Rego Crua. They say life has come to the dead sector.
And as Ravaja says that, is there where we're standing around here, is there any kind of plant growth of any kind nearby. So like any kind of ivy that might be growing along a wall, any kind of weeds that might be growing between the street tiles.
I think so. There are weeds for sure. I'm not sure about ivy or any other like major plants. There are probably a few trees that are sort of lining the cobblestone path here.
All right.
And maybe some like in the blood sector, no one's like keeping gardens.
No, I was mostly thinking if there's anything like weeds or other trees that have been planted here that that could be nearby. When Ravaja mentions bringing back life to the Rego Kader, you see Zehkhun looking at this little bit of these weeds that grow in between a few of the street tiles, and they're just like an inch away from his boots. But as he looks at them, we see that there's little flowers blossoming on them briefly, and Zehkhun like squats down, looks at the blossoms, and says, "Life, huh?" And then he plucks the flowers, and the moment they come into his pale hands, they instantly wither away. And he says, he just briefly remains squatted, looks at the remains of the plants before he straightens back up, his back to Ravaja, at this moment a serious mien. But then he turns around and he puts that smile on again and says, "It's not what you wanted to show me today, right? A ruined part of the city and plant people who try to make it a beautiful garden."
I wanted to spend time with my friend.
I'm sorry. I do not want to rush you or anything. There's so much to see here.
And as you do not have a job yet, I don't think you have a rush either.
Oh, won't you rub it in, Ravaja?
Let us return. The sun is beating down, and I could use a refreshment.
And as we walk away, Zehkhun looks back at the Leshies that might be wandering by, and he just makes a mental note in his head, and then follows Ravaja.
As we come back to the Pleat, it's about maybe a little after midday, and the interior, so I think right through the gates in that courtyard that you described with the various tents and whatnot, there's also a small marketplace that has sprouted up where the orcs can buy what foods they might need, as well as sell trade goods to visitors to the Pleat. The Pleat is being what the orcs have begun referring to the Pleatra, this building complex. The Pleat. Out here we see your friends or roommates at this point. Haloric, a human. Can you give a quick line description of him?
Haloric is the kind of guy who knows how to strike up a conversation with absolutely anybody. And he is probably at this point when if he's in a marketplace or some kind of tavern or little inn that someone put up, he's probably at a table with at least 7 other people who are listening to some story he's telling, and he's putting all these grand gestures into it and everything. He's truly in his element when he has all eyes on him and he can tell some kind of big story.
And see, next to him is Little Boulder Baruch, a broad-shouldered orc.
Absolutely. Little Boulder Baruch got his nickname for various reasons, and Haloric has come up with at least 12 different stories how Little Boulder got his nickname. One of the most likely ones is that because Baruch is, especially for an orc, fairly short. He's pretty small, but he is absolutely packed with muscles. He has an amazing muscle definition. He is very strong, and he's probably at this point just sitting next to Haloric and like with his arms behind his head, leaning back in a chair and just smiling at whatever story Haloric is currently telling, knowing fully well that there's a 50-50 chance that it's absolute nonsense, that it's not true, but the story's still amusing and he's enjoying it.
Something in this exchange, I think something happens that Zehkhun has not seen before, that Baruch, he has got his arms are behind his head, and he like sort of stretches and like brings one arm around the shoulders of Haloric and sort of like squeezes him in like a side hug, but then like leaves his hand there. And Haloric does not seem displeased at this at all.
Zehkhun just smiles to himself.
When there is a crash from a nearby trading stall, an older orc, probably around the same age as you, so elderly, with various like fruits and vegetables that are on sale. You can see like this barrel that had a whole bunch of small apples on it was knocked over, and a group of human men with sort of like tanned peachy skin tones. They're Chilaxian, so they're it's more like a pale peachy skin tone, although it's the end of summer, so maybe they've gotten some sun. They're very red then, they've got sunburns. Are sort of harassing this orc, and the older orc is sort of, no, my apples, what are you, please, I just want to. They're laughing and shouting, and several of the orcs nearby the table where Haloric and Baruch are at sort of like stand up looking angry. Ravaja makes eyes at you. I must step in. Excuse me. And she kind of puts herself in between the table where Haloric and Baruch are sitting at and the men, and begins talking to them. When one of the men, literally like Zehkhun can't hear what the exchange is, but he literally like backhands her, and like sends her to the side.
Zehkhun steps over there, first looking at Ravaja, and quickly checks if she's doing all right, just standing over her and helping her to get back up. He knows that it will take more than a backhand to keep Ravaja down, and he pulls her up, and then he looks at the two men, humans.
Yeah,
you said, right?
It's several men actually.
Several men. Has Zehkhun seen humans here at the Pleat before? Is it not? It's typical that they come here to the market as well?
Yeah, not a whole bunch, but there's people who come through for sure.
Right. Zehkhun turns to them and says, if you're not here to trade or share a drink with us, but come here to harm us, it is better for you to leave.
What's the problem? We've been enjoying your ale. I mean, as sweaty as it tastes. And like one of them spits on the ground.
Enjoying it, you say? You're letting it get the better of you. Is that how the people of West Crown spent their evenings?
This point, the table has stood up and like started coming over, and they outnumber the humans. And you see Ravaja like making eyes at you, and she shakes her head like this could go very wrong, and like she immediately moves over to Haloric and Baruch, who then like turn to the group and the growing sort of orcish mob here, and trying to get them to calm down as you're talking to these five men.
Zehkhun would be remaining in a strong position in front of this group of humans. He's trying to make himself tall, trying to look down at them, but he's also very much aware of the impact that a group of orcs behind him will have on the message he's getting across at this. And especially as he looks at Ravaja, who's been giving him a quick glance, indicating that this could go south pretty quickly. He looks quickly at Baruch and Haloric, also giving them a glance, trying to signal them to, like, remain calm. And then Zehkhun looks at the humans and says, I think it would be best if, for tonight, you leave the Plead. Sleep off your drinks. And if you return tomorrow, we can start out fresh again.
The one who's found on the ground, like, steps up to you. You think your swill is getting the best of us? I'll show you who's gonna get the best of who. He raises up a fist, and Baruch is there before it can move any further, and he grabs it and says, not this time, little man, and even though the guy's, like, taller than him, and pushes him back, and immediately the two other men, like, fall onto Baruch, and he's, like, grabbing them off of him. Haloric and Ravaja are desperately trying to keep the rest of the orcs of the Pleat away from this fight that's growing, but you are left with two of the ruffians, and that is where we're gonna roll initiative.
Okay.
If you'd like to roll diplomacy,
that would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would make sense. I was trying to be diplomatic. For the listeners who are interested, I have a +7 in diplomacy versus a +4 in my perception, so that will increase my chances. Oh, that's an 11 on the die for a total of 18 initiative.
Oh, one of them also got 18.
And in Pathfinder, monsters go before PCs.
Oh, is that really the rule?
That's the case, yeah.
Wow. Good to
Yeah.
know. So, yes, we've got two ruffians here, about 5 and 10 feet apart from you, next to the stall where the apples fell down, and the older orchestrator has, like, ducked down behind the cart there. The ruffian about 10 feet in front of you behind the first one, and then he's going to use open threat. So he first draws a dagger, and then slurs at you. You stupid old man, you'll pay for this. And will try to demoralize you.
Well.
That's a 13. That's not going to demoralize you.
Zehkhun just quickly replies, like I've never heard that one before.
So a second action will stride up to you, and then we'll strike with this drawn dagger. 23 will hit.
Yeah.
For 4 points of damage.
Ooh.
Solo combat's scary.
Yeah, that dagger slices through a bit of my leather clothing.
It's your turn.
It is my turn. This ruffian in front of me is standing so close, has tried to insult me, and now has in fact cut me with his dagger. And I have dangling from my belt. There's a small mace with a steel hat, or like an iron hat at the end of the mace. And one would think that Zehkhun might draw that to smack with it, but instead, as the ruffian is so close, Zehkhun like focuses on the metal that's on the mace, and he's going to pull little bits off it as he uses that for needle darts, which is a cantrip that he can cast, which shapes 3 needles out of a piece of metal in your possession and sends them flying in a tight group toward one target. So there's now these little needles made out of metal hovering right in front of me, and they're going to fly at the ruffian right in front of me. And I'm gonna make that attack roll. That is a total of 24, which is a crit, if I see that correctly. That is a critical hit on the target, which does also mean that the target will take double damage from what I roll, and they will take 1 bleed damage as well. So what I'm rolling here for damage is 7, and they take double of that, which is 14.
Describe your kill.
The darts just fly with a trained precision, like right into the side of the throat of the ruffian, like just hitting some of the most vital parts of the artery there, and the ruffian just collapses to the ground and lies in front of Zehkhun, which is... Zehkhun just looks over at the other ruffian, and I still have 1 action left.
You do.
I want to try to demoralize the other ruffian. So I'm looking at that ruffian over there, and like the body of his companion just dropped down in front of me.
Blood spilling out of it.
Yeah, with my slightly glowing pale blue eyes, I look over at the other ruffian, and I'm going to try to demoralize.
Success.
That's a 19. So they're frightened 1 from witnessing their companion just falling to a few tiny needle darts.
What kind of Belkson magic is that? He says as he takes the bottle he's carrying and just chunks it at you, which will hit for a 19.
Yeah, that does it.
But only for 2 points of damage.
Bottle clashing on my shoulder.
Well then, second action, opening threat, draw his dagger. And you're not gonna get me with whatever dark magics you're working with. As he tries to demoralize you back. And succeeds.
It does, and Zehkhun is actually, for a moment, thinking maybe this other ruffian is a bit more skilled in combat. Maybe there's more to this one. And gauges him. Is there anything else he can do on his turn?
I've got a third action. You know what? I'm going to throw this dagger at you. So as the bottle smashes over Zehkhun's head, we can see some fear enter into his eyes. As he wipes away the sort of ale that's splashed into his eyes, and sees that the ruffian is now holding this dagger by the tip and aiming straight for his head. Critical miss. The dagger just goes like whizzing past and into the ground. And that's his turn. We're back to Zehkhun.
That also means that his frightened condition is gone, because frightened gets lowered at the end of his turn.
Mm-hmm.
Zehkhun, avoiding the dagger that has been flung at him, is now looking at this other ruffian and takes a deep breath, exhales, and there's again like somewhere in between there. We're close to a stand of what was like a vegetable merchant, right? I thought you mentioned that there was like fruits and vegetables and the likes. Yep. And Zehkhun stands like next to this crate of apples. And as Zehkhun raises his empty hands, there's a bit of a shimmer, a bit of a heat wave around him, glow appearing in his hands, and the apples right next to him, they become even brighter red, as if this was the best summer for apples. A warm red glow to this fruit, and there's also a warm glow appearing between Zehkhun's hands as he flings a divine lance at the ruffian. That's an 11.
That hits.
Whoa, yes, that's
literally
still
on the nose.
Okay, let's roll for damage. There's 2d4 spirit damage coming there. That's 5 points of spirit damage. As then, once this divine lance, just this strike of divine energy is flung at the ruffian, we see that some of these apples, which were so bright and beautiful red, you can see that some of them just start to decay a bit. That there's like these holes appearing in them and they become mushy. And that's 2 actions from Zehkhun. And as a third action, he is just going to, step a little bit away from this guy, keeping up a bit of distance. And that is my turn. And that also means that my frightened is gone.
The ruffian, now completely unarmed, just like runs straight at you. Coward! Raises his fist to punch you. But misses by 5, so you dodge that, just like...
Yeah, like bob and weave.
And then he's gonna throw a second fist. Misses by 2, so this one maybe like lands on your chest, but the leather armor absorbs it.
Also, this is not the first time someone's tried to punch Zehkhun. He's used to harder punches than this. I could imagine that this ruffian might also be a little bit inebriated. A little bit of... so there's not much power behind that one. Yeah, alright, so he's just gave chase, and Zehkhun is just... He notices that too soft punch on his sternum, and he just looks down at the ruffian. And he just says... He's kind of torn, but in the end... He also wants to deal with them, so he's going to give it another go with another dose of Divine Lance at this man. Which is a 26. That is a critical hit.
All right.
So that's going to be double damage of what I'm rolling here. I rolled 8, so that's 16 points of spirit damage.
Describe your kill.
As another dose of divine energy is expelled from Zehkhun's body in like this wave of energy. And while the ruffian crumbles from that wave of power of this damage at his actual spirit, he just falls down on the ground. But where this waves over, there is also some of the other vegetables that were in the stand that briefly grow additional blossoms or look more healthy and more delicious for a moment as this radiant energy just rolls over before it fades away again, and some of the fruits and vegetables actually start to decompose and rot.
As we step out of initiative, we can see that Baruch has managed to sort of like bang the heads of 2 of the guys that he's fighting together, knocking them out. The third one having been already knocked out by him. And the Ravaja starts barking orders, and the men's bodies are quickly picked up and moved somewhere within the holds.
Yeah. Zehkhun would actually help with that. Are there still any of the members of this group of humans who are still alive but are still here?
So Baruch managed to knock his 3 unconscious. You killed yours.
Yes, absolutely. No, there's no way that was that was non-lethal.
Right.
Zehkhun sighs, noticing the 2 dead bodies that he caused, and he, to no one in particular, just says under his breath, "I'm sorry," as he also picks up the bodies of the 2 men that he killed and brings them to wherever the people in the orcs in the Pleat would want these bodies to be brought.
Right. I think we montage a little bit later as Ravaja comes to visit you again in your apartment. I think Haloric and Baruch are also there, but one of the walls in this apartment, this cell, has been like broken into a room next door where they're kind of building for themselves.
Right.
So it's like a suite. You've got 2 cells with their own entrances, but there's also a tarp in between that connects, so that you can open it up and talk with one another.
We have some privacy from each other if necessary, right. But we can also roll up the tarp and have like a nice big apartment together.
And also now, I think maybe Zehkhun's now understanding why they were like, we should hang this tarp up here.
Yeah.
With Haloric sort of like smirking. But the three of you are together, maybe sharing an ale.
Yeah.
As Ravaja comes back. So, the bodies have been returned to the Datari. I've spoken with them. The men have tried to claim that we attacked them, but the Datari don't really care. They know death was caused today. It's not the first time in the Pleat that people have been killed, orcs or non. It won't be the last, unfortunately.
Does this occur regularly? Is this common that people come into the Pleat and put up a fight like this?
Not so much anymore. It has calmed down. But when a new caravan arrives, and she sort of like nods towards your group, the agitators in West Crown who don't approve of our presence come out again. It is as if the hive has been disturbed.
They see another flag that is not theirs, and they tend to tear it down.
That is why I have come. I have been approached multiple times in the last year by a human woman named Genevan. She wishes to meet with me to strike up a connection with the Hold, with the Pleat. I have said no each time. And yet she continues. Her latest invitation is for a meeting tonight at a place called Vizio's Tavern. And Zehkhun, I wanted to know if you would accompany me.
You've said you've turned her down earlier. What makes you change your mind now?
I have had enough. I am simply tired. She makes claims of wanting to change the city for the better, and says that if that is to occur, then the Orcish Hold of West Crown must be involved in this process.
What do you know about her?
I think I'm going to ask you to make a roll for this.
Oh, a society roll, perhaps?
Society or diplomacy to be a gather information, but I think society is good.
To no one's surprise, Zehkhun has +0 in society.
Okay.
That is a grand total of 11 on the die, meaning 11 in total.
Okay, so this, rather than representing your information, this
Right.
is going to represent Ravaja's knowledge.
Gotcha.
Because she's met Genevan. Genevan he works in the city as a guide or bodyguard for visiting merchants or businesses. She has a bit of a reputation for being rash. The latest rumor is that she dragged her charge half-dressed out of a whorehouse when he refused to leave before sundown. But otherwise, I have heard nothing but praise for the woman.
And she just wants to talk. No other expectations.
She wants to talk. She says we have aligned interests in bettering West Crown, whatever that means. But she has promised me that if I meet her at this tavern, promises dinner and a conversation that is in both of our best interests. I have not wanted to make waves, but if I had a friend with me, she sort of raises her barely visible light blonde eyebrows.
Zehkhun looks at the ale in his hands and thinks about recent events. Coming here to West Crown, seeing the Pleat, seeing the ruined part of the city. Flowers blossoming. Flowers rotting. The needless fighting. Takes a sip of his ale. Again, puts a smile on his face and says, "Well, how bad can a conversation be, right?" Tumble Through presents Twilight's Edge, a Pathfinder 2nd edition actual play of the Council of Thieves adventure path, converted from Pathfinder 1st edition. Tumble Through uses trademarks and/or copyrights owned by Paizo Incorporated, used under Paizo's fan content policy, paizo.com/licenses/fan content. Tumble Through is not published, endorsed, or specifically approved by Paizo. For more information about Paizo Incorporated and Paizo products, visit paizo.com.